Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to the channel. I am in a chatty mood to talk about books, so that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. I've compiled some of my favorite books from 2026 so far. There were some books that I was really hyped for that did leave me disappointed, so we're going to talk about those today. We're going to talk about a lot of book recommendations. I love watching book recommendations, so this year, like the second half of the year, I just really want to get into like book recs and reviewing books a lot more. So that's what's to come for the remainder of the year, but anyways, let's just get started. Okay, I'm going to start off with one that I was not expecting to enjoy as much as I did, and that is the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. I guess I just wasn't expecting to like this because I wasn't really in the mood for like a rom-com type book, at least for the majority of this year. And then in June, I was just in such a big book slump that I needed something to get me out of it, and I needed a genre change. So I randomly picked this one off of my bookshelf, and I had the best time reading this. I read this, I think, in like 2 days. It was just so incredibly good. It was a book that when I was at work, I was thinking about. When I was driving, I was wishing I had the audiobook so I could just keep staying in this world. In this book, we're following our main character named Sloane, who lost her husband 2 years ago. They had just gotten engaged and he unexpectedly passed away. She is adjusting to life after losing her partner, her best friend. It's a really sad book, but it's done in such a way where like you don't feel so sad. Like you feel like hopeful for the main character. She is trying to navigate life again and trying to kind of like put herself out there and potentially like date again and stuff like that, which she has not really done since losing her husband. Or I keep saying her husband, it was her fiance. Finally, she's starting to kind of feel more like herself. She still lives in the house that her fiance and her bought together, so there's a lot of like conflicting emotions with that. There's a lot of like talk about that too, like staying in a space that kind of brings back memories of traumatic events that happen and how that can kind of bring up emotions that you thought maybe were taken care of. And I just really loved how all of the hard topics were talked about in this book. Our main male character, oh, I forgot to say too, the way that they meet is because our main character, Jason, his dog Tucker ends up like crashing into her car. Basically, he jumps on the top of her car and then jumps into her car. And then Jason is on this like backpacking trip, so he doesn't get any of her voicemails, or like, you know, he doesn't realize that she's trying to get in touch with him. And then she ends up keeping Tucker and then basically makes him prove to her that he loves his dog and that he didn't just abandon him, and that strikes up their friendship. And it's just so beautiful. It's such an amazing story about like friendship, grief, moving on after grief, discovering and forming relationships. And I loved this book. So if you have not read this book, which I feel like a lot of people probably have, but if you have read some of Abby Jimenez's newer releases and you want to dive into her backlist, I would highly recommend reading this one. This one is the second book in an interconnected standalone series. I read this one first, not realizing it was the second book, and I didn't feel like I like missed anything or anything like that. I'm definitely planning on going back and reading the rest of the books in this interconnected standalone, but I didn't feel like I missed anything reading this first. The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I have stated this before, but I am not like a huge college hockey romance person. I'm just not like a huge college book person in general, mostly because I feel like I'm 30 and I feel like sometimes going back into the era of college is kind of like triggering in a way. Like I get mad at characters for like being immature, and sometimes I don't like to like relive that part of my life. But this series made me think about all of the fun and incredible moments that I had in college in such a positive light. The Icebreaker series, I feel like that kind of did the opposite, at least the first book. It kind of did the opposite, where I was like annoyed with how immature and childish they were acting. But this entire series, the Off-Campus series, has blown me away and has made me just relive my college experience in my head in such a positive way. I'm just looking back on it super fondly. So in this book, The Deal, this is the first one in the Off-Campus series. We're following our main character, Hannah, and she's kind of like a genius. Like she's kind of like a brainiac. Like she's really good at school. She just has really good grades. She doesn't really have like a booming dating life or anything like that because of a traumatic thing that happened when she was younger and in high school. Read the trigger warnings on that if you want to know what it is, but it's a heavy topic, and I just felt like it handled it very well, but it also didn't drag the book down. That sounds so bad, but like talking about experiences like the one that she went through can be very hard for a lot of people, and it can be hard to read. But I feel like the way that it's portrayed in this book, it wasn't like glossed over, but it's a contemporary romance book. Like it's not meant to be like necessarily like a heavy topic or a heavy book, but it handled the heavy topic in a way that I felt like the book still felt like it was meaningful but also fun. And I felt like the way that the relationship between Hannah and then our MMC Garrett. I felt like the way that they kind of interacted together and the way that he kind of helped her move past what happened to her and explored different ways in which a relationship could be positive even with this really like atrocious negative thing that happened to her. It was just great. You know, we're definitely thinking of Garrett as kind of this like jock who doesn't really care about anything, but he's so much more down to earth, and he, I think, is my favorite one so far in the series. I have not read the 4th book yet, but he is my favorite of all of the boys that we follow in the off-campus series. I didn't really even tell you what the premise of this book is about, but essentially Garrett has to ask Hannah for help because he is failing the class that they're taking together. It's like a philosophy class or something, and his GPA is such that if he doesn't pass the class then he can't participate in hockey in college, and he is trying to go to like the pros, like the NHL and stuff. Actually, not the NHL. Yeah, the NHL? He's trying to go be a professional hockey player, wherever that is. I'm not a huge sports person, but so they strike up a deal where basically he pretends to be Hannah's boyfriend so that Hannah can get some like street cred, you know? And then Garrett gets help and gets some tutoring from her. And it's just lovely. I love the way that their relationship panned out. I didn't love the 2nd book in this series, but I liked the 3rd one after kind of halfway through. That book is like a one night stand trope, and I don't always love a one night stand trope, but I did like the second half of the 3rd book. I really liked the way that that relationship progressed, and I have not started the 4th book yet, but it's on my July TBR. Okay, sticking with hockey romance, I have to talk about Heated Rivalry, the series. One of my biggest disappointments of the entire year was reading The Long Game. I did not like that book. I did not like that book at all. I thought there was way too much spice in it, and I know these books are spicy. Like, I had read all of the books. I had known what to expect, but oh my gosh, every other page it felt like there was some sort of a scene, and I just felt like I did not get to feel the relationship between Shane and Elia like I wanted to, and it just really bummed me out. But on the positive side, these 2 books in the Heated Rivalry series, Common Goal and Tough Guy, I loved these books, and I'm kind of like, why are we not talking about them? Like, why are we talking about Heated Rivalry when we could be talking about Common Goal and Tough Guy? So I'm gonna talk about Tough Guy first. Tough Guy follows this guy here, the tough guy. His name is Ryan Price, and then we're following this guy here who is, what's his name? I forgot. Fabian, that's right. So Fabian is kind of like this artsy character that lives in Toronto, and he's just very like, you know, like he doesn't mind having like a fling with a guy. He's kind of has been with multiple guys before. He's very confident in his sexuality. He's very confident in being a gay man. He is great at socializing with other people and kind of getting out there and just like, you know, having fun. And then we have Ryan Price, who is basically just riddled with anxiety and does not like to do any of the things that Fabian likes to do because he's just so nervous. Like, he has these inclinations, like he wants to do, you know, stuff like that. Like, he wants to get out there. He wants to, like, you know, explore his sexuality and be confident in who he is as a gay man. He's also not openly gay. He's not necessarily hiding it because he's like ashamed of anything. He's just not comfortable because he's a really anxious person. And so basically Ryan and Fabian strike up a friendship, and it boils into something beautiful and amazing. Fabian is quite younger than Ryan, so there's also kind of like that age gap difference trope in here, which I also really love. I love an age gap. I love an age gap. It's just so fun to read about. I don't know. I just love it. Fabian is a violin player in this book too, so we get like a nice kind of mix between the arts and hockey and like the, you know, music versus sports kind of thing. But yeah, it's really great. And I feel like watching Ryan come out of his shell and just explore who he is as a person was so much fun. I really liked this book. The other thing I really liked about this book was that I felt like there was a good in-between between the like physical attraction part, but also getting to know each of the characters really well. Common Goal, this one is between Eric Bennett, who is the goaltender, and then Kyle. Oh, is this one the age gap romance? This one might be the age gap romance. I thought the other one was also an age gap romance. These both might be an age gap romance, I can't remember. Kyle had just broken up with someone, or someone had just broken up with him. I can't remember, but basically he has his heart broken, and he essentially ends up teaming up with Eric to teach him a little bit about sexuality, you know, and like what you do for fun. Eric is at the end of his career, so he's also kind of exploring like, okay, what does life look like after I stop playing hockey? Like, what does that mean for me? He's also kind of dealing with feelings of like, you know, I don't have anyone and anything because I've just given my entire life to hockey. So what do I do? Like, where do I go from here? They start out more as like friends with benefits, and then it turns into something beautiful, and I really like this book. Again, I felt like this one did a very nice job of doing like a halvesies between the physical attraction that they both had towards each other and those kind of scenes, but then also providing a nice amount of insight into these two guys and like how they, you know, who they are as people, and exploring like tough topics, kind of like, you know, like what do you do in your life after something so big is over and kind of comes to a closing chapter, and what do you do moving forward. I felt like this book talked really nicely about that. Reckless. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but this was one of my favorite books in the entire Chestnut Spring series. I finally finished the series at the beginning of this year. I felt like I was dragging it out a little bit, more so just because I was having so much fun and I didn't want it to end. This entire series could be on this list because I enjoyed every single second of every single book, but I will say I feel like the story that I was looking forward to the most, which was Theo's, or not Theo's. Theo's? What's the last? Bo, the last character, the one in Hopeless. I was a little bit disappointed with that book, mostly just because, I don't know, I was just like kind of disappointed. But I liked it at the same time. But I think I like Reckless more. But I don't know, because I also just looked back on my Fable and I'm pretty sure I rated this book lower than I rated Hopeless. So that might have to change because I feel like this book has stuck in my head longer. In this book, we're following Theo and Winter. Winter is the sister of Summer, and Theo is a bull rider. And Theo is kind of in the same world as Summer's husband, who I'm now blanking, I can't remember his name. Summer's husband, that's the first book, Flawless. He essentially like was training Theo, I believe. And so now Theo is a bull rider. Winter has moved to Chestnut Springs and she's a doctor. She is going through a divorce with a very toxic marriage. Her and Theo decide to have some fun and she ends up getting pregnant. There is a pretty big age gap romance. She is older and then he is younger, which I liked that twist. I feel like a lot of times normally it's the male that's a little older than the female. So I liked that twist. This also has like the grumpy sunshine trope and Winter is the grumpy one. She's like Nesta coded a little bit, like she's like just like a little bit scratchy, you know, like a little sharp, whereas Summer is like the really like, you know, sexy fun one. She is kind of like the intelligent but like sharp and mildly standoffish. So I feel like you don't necessarily love, like, unless you are like that yourself, you might not enjoy reading about that, because she is not necessarily like a super likable character, in the sense that if you want like a lighthearted, fun kind of character, you're not going to get that necessarily with Winter. But I like that she's sharp. I like that she's, you know, going through something really difficult and also not hiding it. Like, she's not hiding the fact that she's going through something really rough and that she's just like not in a good mood, and I like that. Like, I feel like so many times we just try to like hide our mood and stuff, and obviously there's a time and a place for that, but like I just feel like she's not hiding it, and I really appreciated that. I really liked the way too that Elsie Silver talked about the toxic marriage part of that as well, and the age gap romance, because I feel like that was obviously a huge part of this book. So I really liked this one. I thought it was super fun. I was kicking my feet, giggling. I was just having a blast. Okay, those were all of my like contemporary romance slash fun popcorn read romances, and now we're gonna move a little bit more into the romantasy slash dark academia fantasy portion of the video. Half City by Kate Golden. This is a demon hunting book. It also has a relationship with a professor, which I love. I love a professor-student relationship. So in this book, we're following Viv, who lives in the city, and she is hiding the secret that she's a demon hunter. The only other person that knew this secret was her father, who ended up passing away. So her and her dad used to do like training sessions where he would like teach her stuff and teach her how to hunt these demons, and then she would also hunt demons, and basically she's been doing that ever since he passed away. Her mother is kind of like this rich, snobby-ish lady who has really high expectations for Viv. She basically sees her as like getting together with someone in her social circle and then living this like really fancy elite life, but that is not necessarily what Viv wants. Enter Reeve Graveheart, who is the professor at Harker Academy. And essentially he brings her to the academy where she can learn how to officially hunt demons, because she's not necessarily supposed to be doing this without going to the educational facilities to teach her how to properly do this and not get in trouble. So she ends up going to this academy, but no one in her life knows that she's going to this academy. So she keeps it a secret, and she's essentially trying to live this double life. She's trying to go to school and like get an education and learn about this world that she's a part of that no one in her close circle of family and friends really understands or knows about. But then she's also trying to keep up this facade with like her best friend and her mom and trying to make everybody happy. So there's a lot of like family dynamic, friend dynamic, kind of relationships dynamics in here, but then there's also the demon hunting side of it, which is also super intriguing. There's also a bit of a mystery because her dad was murdered and she's trying to figure out like who murdered her father. So there's also that component to it as well. I just thought this book was very well written. I was intrigued the entire time. I never felt like there was a dull moment. And the things that really stuck out to me the most were the discussions and kind of the turmoil between friend, family, and our main character Viv. Shield of Sparrows. Guys, why wasn't I told to read this sooner? This book was so incredibly good. Also, there's a dramatized version of the audiobook, and I was kind of tandem reading between the physical book and the audiobook, and it was incredible. I absolutely loved my time reading this. In this book, we're following Odessa. She is a princess of a specific realm, I guess you could say, or a specific part of this kingdom. She also has a half-sister named May. Maeve is her stepmother, and then her father is a king. Odessa's mother passed away. We don't really know how, why, like what exactly happened, but we know that it was very traumatic for her and her father. Her father remarries Maeve. May was brought up to be this princess that was also kind of like an assassin. Like she had a lot of like training and fighting and all of this kind of stuff. And her whole shtick, I guess, in being raised was to eventually get married to one of the other kings or the princes in the realm and make sure that she could keep the peace with them. So essentially, I think there's 7 realms in this, and they each end up marrying someone from a different realm so that they keep like a peace treaty that was written many years ago. Long story short, May no longer does that, and Odessa ends up going in her place. So Odessa has had no training. She's just kind of been living her life as princess. She's never had these expectations put upon her that she had to do any of this stuff, and she just kind of gets thrown into this situation where she has to basically get married off to this prince. There's also this guardian who is the prince's guardian. We see a lot of the kind of relationship building between the guardian, Odessa, and the prince, and it's very interesting dynamic. The way it all plays out in the end, I was not expecting that at all. So I really, really liked this book. I thought the pacing of it was fantastic. That's a huge thing for me in fantasy book, especially because like fantasy books can just be very overwhelming. There's a lot of characters, there's a lot of like new words that you have to remember, there's lots of places, all that kind of stuff, and it can just get really bogged down if it's not paced right. So for me, pacing is such a huge part of fantasy books and my experience reading them. So I thought the pacing in this one was great. Part of that also could have just been because I listened to the dramatized version of the audiobook. I like went back and forth. I basically just listened to that when I was driving or doing chores. To me, that also tells me that this book was so good I didn't want to put it down. Like I wanted to rent the audiobook from my library so that I could keep being in the story, and I never had to take a break from it. Like it was just, it kept giving me what I wanted and I kept eating it up. It was fantastic. Right after this one, I picked up Rites of the Starling, which this one basically just follows right up where we left off from Shield of Sparrows. The thing I remember the most of it is like this book was just like a big quest, and I sometimes really like that and I sometimes really don't. But in this book, I really liked it. I felt like it was done well. I felt like there was enough action bits to kind of keep me moving throughout the quest, so I didn't feel like I was just in the same place for the entirety of this entire book. The other thing that I loved in this book was the ending and like the whole like wrap up between Odessa and her father and her stepmom. Like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It was so beautiful. Like I was almost crying because of the reveals in this series just between the dad, Odessa, and the stepmom. Like holy crap. I was not expecting that. Like there were just so many things about this series that I absolutely loved. So many unexpected kind of twists and turns that I just appreciated so much. So if you are looking for a new fantasy read, I would highly recommend reading these 2 books. I feel like Shield of Sparrows came out last year and it was like sort of hyped, but then Rites of the Starling I feel like was more hyped this year, and that got me just like so excited to get into the series. And I am glad that I waited now because I feel like reading them back to back was a great experience, and I do feel like I will reread these when the 3rd book comes out. I'm pretty sure this is just a trio, so I believe the next book coming out is the last one in the series, which is great. I love a trio. City of Iron and Ivy by Thomas Kent West. I feel like I have not heard anybody talk about this book, but it is very good. I remember reading this when I was kind of in like a book slumpy type mood, and I got this in my Alluria subscription box. I can't remember. It was April of this year. I was so intrigued by all of the complexities of this book. It's almost like Bridgerton in a sense. It's definitely giving like that era, you could say, plus also has witches and like potion brewing and a really interesting system with the magic with flowers. Like, it's just, I love this book. I love the world in here, and I loved how it intertwined so many different parts. Like, it intertwined magic with Bridgerton and also like this complex kind of weaving of botanism. So Elsbeth is our main character, and she lives in this alternate London society that is magical. Elsbeth is sent to like her uncle's house or something like that to try to basically engage in London society and find a spouse. Her sister, I think it was the year before, she did the exact same thing and she ended up going missing, and they've never found her. Her name was Persephone. And so essentially, like, we're following Elsbeth on this journey to find a suitor, but also to figure out what happened to her sister. So yeah, there's like mystery mixed with magic, mixed with London society, mixed with botanism. So I haven't talked about the botanism part yet. Everyone in this little area is like a floromancer, which means that they can create like different types of flowers that have like magical powers in them, essentially. So like, and not even like magical powers, it's not necessarily the right word for it, but like they could brew stuff that had, like, they could create a flower that could brew like a potion that could like paralyze you or kill you. You know what I mean? Like, they could create a flower that could feed you. They could create a flower that could heal you. They could create a flower that would, you know, kill you, put you to sleep, heal your wounds, you know, all that kind of stuff. But you have to learn how to do them depending on how difficult the flower is. So it's not like you are just born with all of these powers. You have to acquire the ability to form these flowers and these toxins and stuff like that as you are, you know, gaining power and such. I feel like that I did a terrible job at explaining that. But anyways, think Bridgerton with magical botanism and floromancers. I thought the ties between stuff that happened at the beginning of the book and at the end of the book were fantastic. I thought they, like, everything just tied in so well. I feel like the book was wrapped up in a nice little bow, and as it should, because this is a standalone fantasy. So if you're looking for a standalone fantasy that just, you know, from start to end, it just wraps up super nicely and everything is like very tightly, you know, wrapped by the end of the book, I would highly recommend this one. I didn't realize how many books I had to yap about and how long I could yap about them. Let's just keep going. Conform and Beneath. These two were both 5 stars for me. I loved them. Let's talk about Conform first. This book I feel like is getting a ton of hype right now, and for very good reason. I love dystopian romances. I love them. I eat them up. I feel like I like them better than fantasy, which is saying a lot because I love fantasy books. But there's just something about dystopian that makes it like so real that I am scared by it, but also makes me see the world in like a more hopeful light, but also a more terrible light. Does that make sense? I simultaneously feel more hopeful, but also more saddened because the world could potentially be like this, you know? We're following Emmeline in this book. She has a job to basically delete, I think they're like photos or something of like the past. Her job is basically to like try to erase parts of the past that are no longer necessary to have. They live in this society where there's like below people and then there's the elites. The elites are called the Illum, and they basically rule the entire town. I think of it as like a town, but really it's like a kingdom, essentially. Like how you would see a kingdom in fantasy books, but it's almost like Divergent, where it's just like takes place in like the city of Chicago. Like that's how I think of it, is like it takes place in the city of Chicago, and there's like the people up top, the Illum, who live in like the top of the Sears Tower, and then everybody else lives underneath them. You know what I mean? I kind of think of it like that. But our main character, what's her name? Oh yeah, Emmeline. She's basically just biding her time waiting until she gets a procreation contract. So essentially in this realm, you have to get a procreation contract to then procreate with the Illum. There's a whole underlying kind of conversation about how when people in power take over, that one of the first things to go is our reproduction rights. And I think that that's obviously a huge topic right now in our society today that needs to be talked about. And I thought this book did a great job of talking about it down to the system, but also not shaming people for wanting to be in a place where they could potentially go up to the elites. So there's like a group of people who, obviously whenever there's like a rebellion, there's like a group of people who just are like, no, like I want to destroy the system, I want to burn it to the ground. And then there's like a group of people who are like, I obviously don't like the system, but if I was in the elites or in the Illume, like I could see the benefit from it type of thing. And I think that this book did a good job of explaining and exploring both of those positions. There is a love triangle in this book, which I really loved. I loved the triangle of romance. After I read that, then I immediately had to go read Beneath by Ariel Sullivan. So this one I think came out at the beginning of this year, and I read it like quite soon after I think it came out. This takes place 6 years after like the big kaboom, basically like when the world ended and some big disaster happened and they all had to go into hiding. I picture the hiding as almost like the, you know, the show Silo on Apple TV that was based off of the book. It's like Dust, Shift, all of those ones. That's how I picture like the underground society and Beneath. So basically all of them are living below ground in this huge facility essentially, and all of them are split up into these different, you could call them factions, but like different groups. And our main character in here, she gets recruited to do more of the policing duties, and she basically joins this, like, it's not a military academy-esque thing, but it has vibes like that. So she basically joins the military portion of this society, and they have to venture above ground and kind of try to figure out, like, are they able to go live up there? What's going on? Like, are we safe to try to like repopulate the earth? The romance in here was fantastic. This is not a love triangle. This is just, you know, between two peeps, but it was fantastic. It was very good. The main character in here is so like gritty and hardcore, and I just absolutely loved that. I loved it. Talking about this book is making me want to reread it immediately. I think a lot of people preferred Beneath over Conform, and I wouldn't say that I preferred one over the other. I just liked them for different reasons. Like, I liked Conform more so because of the Handmaid's Tale kind of vibes, but I really liked Beneath more so because of the like Divergent Silo-esque vibes. Direbound. Oh my gosh, guys, this book is so freaking good. I still have my bookmark because I picked this for one of my TBRs, a book over 500 pages. Incredible. I absolutely loved this. Also, guys, I feel like I'm getting weird because I've been talking for a super long time. So if I start to get weird, I'm not apologizing for it. Just FYI. So in this book, we're following Marin. Her sister Selah gets taken away and basically captured by the enemy territory, which is essentially vampires. Like, we can just kind of call them vampires, I guess. And she thinks that the only way that she can get her sister back, Selah, is by entering into the military of her society and then being able to cross the border into the enemy territory to try to get back her sister. Selah is not the only one that's been captured. There have been other children that have gone missing in their town, and it seems like the higher ups, like the elite in this society, don't really care. Like, it doesn't really seem like they're doing anything about it. Marin ends up enlisting in the army, which it just so happens that this year is a bonding year. They have to go through the trials, plus they have to bond to a direwolf. She ends up bonding with this direwolf, and they don't have a good relationship. In the sequel Furybound, we also end up getting communication between direwolves and like the pack and everything, which I loved. It was definitely giving Fourth Wing vibes, but I actually think I prefer this series over Fourth Wing at this time. I read Fourth Wing when it first came out, so I feel like I need to do a reread of it. I am sat for this series. I love it. The trials were intriguing. They were amazing. I felt like there was some good like action scenes, like some good fighting scenes, some good training scenes, but then I also felt like the love interests in this book, there was kind of like a triangle between them. One of the components of the love triangle I was not anticipating whatsoever. Like, I did not see that coming, and I loved being surprised by that. It just brought me so much joy. I absolutely loved it. Another 5-star read for me was The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. If you just heard a farting noise, that was my foot. Okay, I just want to make that very clear. The middle was a little bit slow for me, but it totally reconciled itself because of the ending. Holy crap, this book made me tear up. It made me cry. The One Dark Window series by Rachel Gillig is part of what brought me back into fantasy and reading so much. I ate that book up. I loved the sequel. I just loved that series. It was so incredible. So I had very high hopes for this book. At the beginning, I loved it. Loved diving into it. I loved the premise of it. The middle was a little bit boring, but then the ending, incredible. We're following Sybil, and she is essentially this, what do they call them? I picture her as like a nun. She's a diviner. A nun, I guess you could call him a nun, but essentially she lives in this like abbey. That's how I think of it, as like an abbey with this person who is in charge of all of the diviners, and then people come to this abbey. The diviners go through this really like horrific process in order to achieve a divining image or a divining a divine. The 6 other diviners start to go missing, and she's like, what the hey, what's happening? Then she ends up going on this quest to try to find the reason and find out where the other diviners are. The way that this story unfolds is incredible. Everybody talks about the gargoyle, but holy crap, the gargoyle. Oh my gosh. And if you've watched Game of Thrones, you know the character that I'm talking about when I refer to the gargoyle. That made me cry. That whole ending, oh my gosh, that made me cry. I was struck. My mouth was agape. I was like, what? What am I reading? What am I reading? This is incredible. I honestly think that this might be one of my favorite books of the entire year, if not my favorite book. Like, I feel like this is going to be in the top 3, and I do plan on rereading this, I think, when the sequel to it comes out, which is in September. So I do plan on either like listening to it on audio or rereading it, and I'm so excited. I can't wait. It was so good. That was a lot of yapping. My throat is so dry. I need to like go chug a bunch of water. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed me yapping about books. I love talking about books, and honestly, talking about books and like reliving how I was feeling while I was talking or while I was reading the book is just so fun. And I hope you guys pick up some of these books. I'm not going to go through my disappointments of the year right now because 1, this video I feel like is already so incredibly long, and 2, I feel like I could probably make a whole video of disappointing videos or disappointing books, so I think that might be in our future at some point. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!